young Ryan boy.
Kevin.
And I also took a lot of these young fellows into the Princeton League, in the YMCA League when they had it. I took a team from South Brunswick into that league, and I mean, it was all South Brunswick boys. One of them is now a lawyer. A good friend of David's, he's now a lawyer in New York. But it was just the idea that I've seen them grow up.
Like I said, the fire company.
And they did take the championship.
And you took buses. You didn't, even as you were getting older, you just didn't have a car available. You always used the public transportation into Princeton.
So it's going back now, though, that you got more cars, less transportation as the public goes, and you have more complaints from people that you didn't have in the years ago. I mean, our road system has got to increase. It's got to get better.
Well, I can remember when we first moved there. I mean, it was so quiet. And there was traffic, but I was born in Trenton, so I was kind of used to that. But it really was country to me. I mean, this is really. And then over the years, you could see it, increase. But no, like I said, I really do think the fire company was the one thing for the families, for the young boys at that time. I mean, they couldn't wait till they were old enough to join the fire company, and everyone helped out. Families, I mean.
What I can say is my dad started with the fire company, and myself, my father was a chief, I was chief, and my son is chief right now.
The other one was, yeah.
So, and the other one has been chief.
It's 4 generations.
And I got the 4th generation right now is riding as an officer of the fire company, yes. So it's the 4th generation of the fire company. We have 3 generations right now in the fire company.
And
So
you
I'm
went
still active.
to this school on the corner?
I went to both schools, yes. I went to
did you-
Franklin, and then I went, when I moved over into South Brunswick after my first year, I started and went through up to 8th grade in Kingston School.
And what was the school like that? How many grades in a room?
Well, when the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade were all in one room. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd were in one. Kindergarten, 1st and 2nd, and 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So you had 3 grades in each room.
So you related to the new system that came to South Brunswick with Kendall Park, that they wanted ungraded classrooms that everyone was so against.
Let me see if I did. 8th grade, 19. When did Kendall Park come out?
58.
Yeah.
Yes, I was. The school in Kingston was still, so 3 grades to
And
a
where did
classroom.
you graduate from?
I graduated from Kingston School in the Kingston Firehouse.
Kingston Firehouse.
We had our graduation exercise in the Kingston Firehouse. I then went to South Brunswick. Through South Brunswick, I went to Princeton High. At that time, some students of Monmouth Junction still went to Princeton. The rest of them were going to Jamesburg High.
1940 they started to
Right.
Jamesburg.
All right, so when I was transferred into high school in South Brunswick, going to Princeton, there were still 2 or 3 young ladies in that from Monmouth Junction who had started in Princeton who were finishing up. And I think the last class was 43 or 44 that came out of Princeton.
Did you have bus
It might have been 40.
transportation?
Oh yeah, we had bus transportation.
I mean, public.
But we had a walk, we had bus transportation, but you had to walk. They didn't pick the corner of Route 1 at 27 and got on the school bus. You didn't have a bus stopping at every corner like they do today. It's just like, I see this bus transportation is great, but I don't see why a bus driver has to stop every block. Why a student can't walk at least 1 block to and get everybody on a bus.
Many places they're not sidewalks.
Well, just for example, in here, where there's no traffic even, this school bus stops in 2 or 3 spots in this area. And there's no reason why these kids cannot walk down to the one corner and everybody get off it. Like at the clubhouse, why everybody couldn't walk to one spot and get on. I think it's a waste of taxpayers' money with all the bus stops, because it does cost money to stop a bus, start it, and stop it, and start it. I definitely feel that our school system has improved with the high high school and the education that the kids get today. I think the SIPET program was a very good program. I understand they've done away with that in a sense where they used to go to work. And I feel it was one of the greatest things you had, because then you got young kids who were learning what it was to be out in the business field.
Right. That's where my son started with his landscaping. He worked at Amada's and SIPET.
Cemetery in Kingston, again, is in Franklin Township,
Yeah,
but that dates back to the early 1700s.
Main Street.
yeah.
Yeah, Main Street.
There used to be a hitching post right out
Main
in front
Street
of the
and
house.
that other is,
It's now called Route 27, it's no longer Main Street.
okay, Route 27, but the street along, that goes in.
It's
that-
Church Street,
that-
along Church is
Church.
where the next is cemetery.
And there's an old church, well, that's still not South Brunswick, okay.
Yeah.
All the churches are not in South Brunswick and Kingston.
Okay.
The Presbyterian Church dates back to before Revolutionary days. Matter of fact, they've already celebrated their 250th, and I believe they're towards 300 now. The town of Kingston will be, or South Brunswick will be 200 years old. And I do know that originally South Brunswick was part of Piscataway Township at one time.
You haven't heard that one?
I think, yeah, I think I read that somewhere.
Matter of fact, you come to the pancake breakfast on April 13th at the Kingston
On their
Firehouse,
placemats,
you'll have a history, a little bit of history of Kingston.
Great,
They've done some research on it.
What are they celebrating?
so
their
that's,
300th?
Who?
Oh, that's
South
the fire.
Brunswick. The
Yeah.
fire company's celebrating their 75th year in '99. And the squad is celebrating its 25th year this year,
The fire company is
And-
having a photo night, April
26 also, which
26th,
you might
with
get some
all
information
photos
of
of
Kingston.
Kingston.
when is that?
April 26th.
26th?
Yeah.
Saturday
They
night.
will have all types of old photos there and people there to talk about the town of Kingston, which might give you some, it'll give you history from both sides of the street, because both of them are the same age.
George, it's so close to Main Street, that old church, how old is that church opposite the cemetery?
I don't believe that's as old as the Kingston Presbyterian Church on Main
I
Street.
thought it was 17. Yeah,
It's all, both of them are 1700 churches, if I'm not mistaken. If you look at the pews inside, you can tell they're old.
yeah, actually, yeah.
I don't know exactly the age. I'll tell you who can give you that, Jimmy Potts.
Well, I think it's out front on there.
It might be out in front
Yeah.
of their plaque too.
She just
I know the cemetery has Revolutionary Day burials in there. There are members of the Revolution buried in the cemetery. And
Oh,
that
that's
is
weird.
also the street that Washington walked down when he went,
church?
yeah,
Follow the canal.
he followed the canal, right straight down along the canal. So I do know that, and I know he came into Kingston during the Revolutionary time. And the old swimming hole, though, is no longer there.
Yeah.
The canal. He used to swim where the old drawbridge was, right below that. And if you remember the little pond they had on the other side of the drawbridge, on the other side of the canal, where
I just remember swimming in the canal.
you
I don't-
remember the tunnel that came through for the overflow of water from the Millstone River to get into the canal? We used to go down and dive through the tunnel and come back up on the other side.
So that was your swimming pool.
That was our swimming. Yeah.
So your children are grown and they've all stayed in South Brunswick, or?
No, two of my children
Couldn't
are in
afford it.
still, well, one's in Franklin. George lives in just across the line in Laurel Avenue. My other son is living, my third son is living up on the Kingston Terrace. or
Horizons.
Princeton Horizons, what they call it, off of Kingston Terrace Road. I have a son living on 107 Dickinson Street in Hamilton Township. And my daughter is living down in Robbinsville. So they stayed as close to the area that they could afford to stay.
And how many grandchildren do you have?
We have 8 at this time.
Very good.
Yeah, but all girls but one.
One grandson that's following the tradition. But,
Well, there were all boys in your family also, no girls.
right.
Mine was all boys. She's the only child. Had a brother but died at birth. So, we have 3 boys and a girl, and of course Norman has 3 girls and a boy, and Les has 4 boys and a girl. Norman's children did not stay in the Kingston area. One of them lives in Dayton. One lives up in Kendall Park area, and one lives over near South Brown Brook. There's 3 girls. The boy is still at home. With Les's family, he has the 4 boys. One's living down in Ewing. One lives in Dayton. Let's see if I can get them straight. One lives in Kingston. The daughter lives down in Hamilton Township. And the other boy is still at home. So, actually speaking, we did not move too far from the area. If you look around, I mean, most of us stayed within the area of Kingston, in a 15-20 mile radius anyway. And of course, usually girls go to where their husbands are from, and the boys may stay more likely at home than what girls do.
I can remember, like I said, it does come back to families and volunteering. I can remember his mother telling the stories during the war when they would have the air raids, how she would leave the house and run up to the firehouse, and someone, you know, the family was in need due to a fire or whatever, you know, they would set up the collections, and it would be kind of a whole town.
Was there an air watch then? Air raid?
Yes, there was.
Where was
back
that?
Well, they had, Dave Hume was in charge of that, if I remember right, as far as the Kingston area was. He was the civilian defense leader. And the phone call, he used to do it by phone calls. Mother would get a phone call and say, we have an air raid alarm, you know, or they were doing it for testing or whatever they were doing it. She would get out of the house and run to the firehouse and push the siren button for the air raid, set that off. And of course I didn't have to spend much time here during those. I was in the service.
Right, right.
I was in the service when the Rathskeller burned down in 1943, and I remember Les telling me about it, looking out his bedroom window and seeing the flames going up into the air, and they talk about how the firemen all enjoyed themselves with what they found in the hotel as they were after the fire. They had a good party.
And where did you serve in the service?
I was with the United States Navy, trained as a pharmacist mate, serving with the United States Marine Corps. I had a few places, Saipan, Tinian, Iwo Jima. I was there, saw the flag raised.
Wow.
That's the Marine.
The Marine picture of Iwo Jima with the flag going up. I was within 100 yards of that when it went up. I watched that go up, and I also saw the man get shot in the back that would help raise it. Because the Japanese used to come out of the tunnels. That whole island was nothing but tunnels from one end to the other. Mount Suribachi, they used to have was all tunnels down in, and they were down in these little caves. It was quite a thing.
They didn't take many prisoners either,
Who?
the Japanese.
They don't believe in prisoners. We didn't believe in it either in the end. You didn't dare take a prisoner from what experiences we had with the prisoners when they come out to surrender to machine guns strapped to their back or have hand grenades into their armpits, and they could be standing like this, and when you walked up close to them, they'd just go like that and drop them. So we didn't take too many prisoners either.
Country boy in a country town.
But it was a war that I was hoping was the last of any. But then you had your Korean, and you had the Vietnam War, which they didn't even want to recognize, and our men were getting killed. And as far as I was concerned, it was just as much a war as World War II was. For the fellows who had to go to Korea or had to go to Vietnam, they should get just as much credit and just as much rights as anybody else got. And I still felt that this country could have done a lot more for the veterans of the wars that they have not done.
You still only get a $50 deduction on
taxes.
on the taxes. That's been how many years that they
Well,
haven't raised it, right?
They haven't raised that at all.
That's
They
about
give-
all we get, right?
They give you more for senior citizens than they do for fighting in a war.
Right.
I mean, you have to live to 65 to get the senior citizen, and then, you know,
I believe there's some veterans waiting for the World War II bonus that they never got.
Yeah,
That the surrounding states,
I never saw a bonus
Did
from
very
the-
well.
Yeah. We never saw much of anything in New Jersey from the war. It's like a lot of states recognized what you were and gave you degrees in certain things. If you were like in Pennsylvania, if you had been a pharmacist mate in the Navy in Pennsylvania, you were with a year's schooling, you could become a pharmacist. Not in New Jersey. So, you know, there's things that New Jersey didn't do that they are still lacking in doing for their veterans. As much as they say they do this and they do that, they really don't do anything for veterans.
Right.
And, you know, it's very sad. But again, I think that we are working towards a very good township, and I hope that the township starts and realizes that we cannot have all this building that we have, and we can't keep building houses and having people move in unless we are going to improve the roadways, the school system, and a way of getting money for the school system other than taxation. You just can't keep adding students to the school system, and because I understand the school that we're now building may not be big enough by the year 2002, which to me was ridiculous. Well, I gave him 2 years benefit, but I think it's
Actually, you know,
ridiculous.
well, it's the anticipated growth that's already been approved.
Yeah, I realize that, but you know,
Well,
then don't add any more homes because you've already got enough growth.
All I can say, they tell me that the developers have the right to build, so I.
Not if we don't sell them, to let them, give them the right.
Actually, all that land down off
I think the
Road.
bad thing, and I brought this up years ago to the township and to the school boards, that somewhere in the state of New Jersey, they've got to make the builder responsible for education and for the roads in the town with charging for so much for every house that is built. That the developer should be paying towards the township and to the state towards that fee, and they're not doing it.
We're very
And they
far
claim
from
this
that.
that it can't be done, well, I think it can be. But, no, the whole township has gone from rolling farmlands.
I'm sure you remember Mr. Barlow,
Oh, I remember
That's
Mr. Barlow and Mr. Underwood,
and who else do you remember representing Kingston on the committee?
Dick Casey, as he was mayor, I believe, of the
Right.
township at one time.
Mhm.
Of course, I do remember, not from Kingston, but I do remember the women that were on there as mayors, and Les Schwab on over there. I mean, people like that, yes, and of course Grace's father, who's Mr. Barlow, Grace DeVal. And Mr. Casey, who still owns property in Kingston, but lives now in Princeton, who was also a mayor. And yes, I do remember the Democrat was because of Dick Casey. That's the only reason I'm there as a Democrat. I went over and registered because I had to vote. I had a registered Democrat to vote for Casey. At the time, I was not even registered when he was running, so it goes back quite a few years.
Mr. Gilbert was there too in Kingston.
George Gilbert, Trap Rock Industries, who started Trap Rock Industries. He lived in Kingston. Him and his brother started. Then you had Matthews Construction, if you want to go way back in time too. They used to live on the corner of Route 27 and we're next door to Kingston Garage. They started Matthews Construction, that's going back quite a few years back too. And the Catellis, which I mentioned earlier.
Now, you
Business.
remember we used to call them hucksters, used to come in and sell their squares, like the Jimmy Ponce and her dad, I remember.
Well, Jimmy Potts and her father toured the streets of Kingston for years
Every Saturday.
with their fresh vegetables and fruits. And that's going back before I can always remember that. Then when I was just walking around the streets. But that is gone. And it used to be you always got fresh vegetables and fresh fruits from the truck.
Did you have a bread man?
Yes, we used to have milkmen, Decker Dairy. Was one of them, and you had Tasty Cake,
Dugan's.
Dugan's Bakery that used to ride around and sell.
Seems,
I delivered newspapers, in which I did back in 38 and 39 and 40 when I first started going to high school, and I took the paper route for the home news.